So the new Peter Pan trailer just dropped and it was completely unsurprising. I mean, what else would you have expected? It's a live action remake of a beloved cartoon movie by Disney. Nothing that happened in the trailer or the reactions to that trailer couldn't have been predicted by someone who's been paying attention.
Are you
Lost boys?
Every last one of us.
But you're not all boys. So?
But then it occurred to me that this is probably going to be the only opportunity I'll ever get to talk about the Wendybird and actually have people click on the video. Because when I think back to that which was taken from us, it raises points about the idea of being woke as it's come to mean in today's cultural landscape. Well, as much as it can from a term that's kind of become completely meaningless due to overuse. To be more specific, the Wendybird is a prime example of why things that would initially normally be derided, if handled well, can actually make for great inclusions into the story. Like the trailer that's inspired so many eye rolls in people, this webtoon is a take on Peter Pan's story that's notably more inclusive than the original. Except it's not an unnecessary cash grabby live action remake of a movie that already exists and feels like it's only made such changes to say that it did. The webtoon actually tells its own interesting story around the original, one that plays to a harder edge of realism than most adaptations of the famous story. It focuses on Wendy Darling and her dreams of avoiding growing up and becoming a hero. Dreams that seem to come to reality when Peter shows up and whisks her and her sisters away. Yes, sisters. Now I know many people's first instincts to the race and gender changes in this story would be to recoil in horror, especially with how badly Hollywood has handled such situations. After you've been burned a couple times, you start being wary of fire. But I actually think a lot of the changes here work well for the story being told. And they're low-key enough that unless you have a strong attachment to Wendy's brothers in the first place, it isn't really that big of an issue, as having her siblings be girls helps contrast Wendy's feelings regarding being a woman in Victorian England. The story focuses on Wendy suddenly being faced with the harsh realities of violence and pain that comes from fighting pirates and dealing with the less than amazing realities of Neverland. But despite and because of the hardship she goes through, as well as the tenuous help of Peter and Tiger Lily, she begins to grow into her own as a warrior and even a leader. One of my favorite scenes in the story is when Peter tells her to try and fight as herself instead of just trying to copy the badass shadow warrior that is Tiger Lily. Peter Pan, on the other hand, is a child, not just in his youth but in his personality, avoiding responsibility in favor of having fun, even to the detriment of others. He ran away from home to avoid growing up and refuses to do so in the present. He doesn't take things seriously and often endangers people because of it. The series takes a good long look at him and contrasts his rejection of responsibility with Tiger Lily, who leads her people in a more serious and responsible manner than Peter's handling of the Lost Boys. Not to say Tiger is perfect herself, coming off as rigid and abrasive in contrast to Peter's looser and more accommodating methods of training. Neverland itself is a frightful place, with hidden monsters, the threat of forgetting why you even ran away from home in the first place, and shadows, representations of your own inner darkness and fears that threaten to consume you as a real physical threat, all while under the control of a final villain I wish we knew more about. Peter very notably tries to hide how terrifying the place really is from Wendy, but even she sees through it eventually, especially because Peter's own refusal to grow up makes him especially dangerous when it comes to shadows. Speaking of shadows, you may have noticed something. Yes, there are superpowers in this, or more specifically, ethereal weapons, formed from when you take control of your shadow and weaponize it. Something Peter, who is famous for often losing his shadow, just does not seem to be able to do. The story is centered on ideas of responsibility, freedom, and confronting your own darkness. And on a narrative level, I believe it provides an interesting case study for how things that often feel like they are done solely to say that you did it can actually positively impact your story as long as you do it right. I mean, it's hard to deny that when you look at Hook, whose entire crew is made up of women and one trans man who became pirates to get out of their oppressive lives. And this change really works for playing into Wendy's own dilemma of freedom in her own society without getting in the way of the crew's effectiveness as dangerous villains. They also contrast Hook's story, as she isn't running away from oppression but rather from her own responsibilities as a parent, which plays into Peter's own struggles when it comes to facing responsibility. Also, this version of Hook's crew being notably multinational helps sell the idea that she picked them all up randomly from separate places while out to sea, which better informs her character. Weaving the changes into the story is infinitely better than when it feels like such changes are purely cosmetic and made so they could be bragged about. Now of course the story wasn't perfect. As of writing this script, there are only 2 posts on the Webtoon subreddit that weren't made by the mod. Both are by me, and one is me being rather critical of the story's writing, specifically around Peter Pan's choices. But honestly, even the issues I had weren't enough to dull my enjoyment. And the Webtoon is beautiful with colorful and gorgeous character designs that stick in your mind. My favorite designs are the end of season design for Jean, Wendy's sister, who has her own development in response to the trauma she's faced, and Cheng, Hook's first mate with a glowing magic eye. This paragraph exists largely so I can bring them up because I doubt I'll ever have a chance to talk about this webtoon again. Because really, all of this kind of builds to something I can't tell you because this got cancelled after season 1.
Pain.
Yeah, I honestly couldn't really tell you why it wasn't picked up for a second season. It was doing better than some webtoons I've seen get picked up for second and even third seasons, and the story was really good compared to some webtoons I've seen reach hundreds of episodes. I believe there may be an explanation at the author's note at the very end, but that's 50 chapters into the daily pass and I'm not waiting until May to make this video. Now, I'm pretty sure that if Disney announced that its Peter Pan remake had an almost all-female pirate crew with the exception of one trans man who became pirate to escape oppression, Twitter would actually explode. But these changes aren't a guaranteed death sentence for a story, and I believe the Wendybird is a perfect example of this. I'm not that affected by the decision to change up the races and genders of a few minor characters and Hook in an adaptation of a 100-year-old property that better serves the unique story being told by that adaptation. I found the Wendybird to be a genuinely good story that really dove into themes of maturity and featured great development and even good fight scenes, so much so that I've always wanted to make a video on it. And so here we are, with me talking and you watching this on YouTube, or Patreon if you chose to get early access. I would actually recommend that you do check out the first season for the story it contains in and of itself. So tell me, did you read the Wendybird when it was coming out? If not, does this video make you interested in checking it out? Tell me in the comments down below, and while you're at it, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more content. Thank you and good day.